Okay, finally welcome to the first ever practical video of this free training. The first two videos I did, the first one was the introductory video on everything that is going to be done in this course and what you can become at the end. The second video was how to download and install Photoshop. So for those who have not watched those two videos, there is a link on those videos on the description of this particular video. This third video now, we go into the practical proper of the training. So we proceed. Now I'm using MacBook Pro 15. I am using Photoshop on MacBook Pro 15, but for any student who is using Photoshop on Windows, it's still not an issue. For any shortcut key that I use on MacBook, I will also indicate or mention the same shortcut on Windows. So if you look on my dashboard of my computer, you'll see Adobe Photoshop CS6, which has been installed already. I will just go ahead and click on it to open it. And here we have Photoshop opened. Here we have Adobe Photoshop open. So I'm going to walk you through everything. On this first video, will first of all concern how to configure Photoshop or know Photoshop before even starting to use Photoshop. So we'll first of all start by configuring Photoshop. The first thing you always want to take note of when you open Photoshop is its configuration before even going to its uses. So if you go up to the top of your Photoshop, up to the top, you get to where it says File. On Windows, it's found at the File section or Edit section. You want to hover right at the bottom. At the bottom here, you see what is called Preferences. But for Mac, it's at the icon Photoshop. So when you hover to the section of Photoshop, this is it here, Preferences. And you can also access these preferences using Control K for Mac, Command K. So if I press on Preferences General, here I have all the settings of Photoshop, the general settings of Photoshop opened in front of me. So now I want to walk you through the settings. We are not going to talk about all the settings, but some particular important ones, starting with the interface. So if you look at the interface section here of my Photoshop, you realize that we start with color theme. I'm on the gray interface. So if I click on the darker one, you see the color changes. If I click on the light gray, the color changes, and if I click on the lighter one, it changes. So these are the 4 different colors of Photoshop that you can choose from depending on your eye view, depending on how you want to see your Photoshop. Some people like it plain white, some people like it plain black, some people like it dark gray, while others like it light gray. So it depends on how your eye interacts with your screen. Okay, I always love my own with the default setting. That's the first thing you want to touch on your Photoshop. Now the second thing you want to touch, we'll go to file handling. Now on CS6, you see file compatibility. Ensure that you have camera raw preferences. It should be showing here. I think after that, yeah, what I wanted to show on this file handling is the automatically saved recovery information. So Photoshop is this kind of application that when you are working on it, depending on the setting here, this minutes, as you're working on it, every after, for mine which is 10 minutes, every after 10 minutes, it does automatic save. That is, it automatically save part of my work temporarily on its dashboard. So that is to say, when, like for us who are in Africa, when a light goes off and your computer light goes off and reboots back, Photoshop will restart itself, and then it will open the last saved work that it saved for you automatically on auto recovery, because at the moment of shutdown you were unable to save your work. Now, this automatically save recovery depends also with the RAM of your computer. For those whose computer's RAM are 8 GB and above, I will recommend you use 10 minutes, 5 minutes. 10 minutes, 5 minutes can go. But for those whose computer RAMs are not that heavy, like 4 GB, 6 GB, I would recommend you using 15 minutes. Why? Because whenever this setting is active, whenever it's trying to do this automatic save, it is using up a lot of RAM. That is why you should always work with your RAM in order not to slow your computer down. Okay. The next thing is performance. Here also I want to talk about RAM usage and performance. In the performance section, Photoshop is going to show you your RAM, tell you your available RAM and everything. So my computer is a 8 GB RAM computer, and here they are telling me that out of the 8 GB, I have 6 GB available. That is 6,666 megabytes. So 6 point something gigabyte available that Photoshop can use out of the 8 GB. Now it is asking me, out of this 6 point something gigabyte RAM, what percentage do I want to give for Photoshop? Because Photoshop has its percentage of RAM that it uses. Again, the more higher your RAM percentage, the more faster your application. The lower your RAM percentage, the slower your application. That is to say, there are some high resolution images or large files that will load slowly on your Photoshop based on the amount of RAM that Photoshop is using. So it is not that application that automatically bumps up to your computer and use every single amount of RAM there. No, it asks you the percentage of RAM you want to use. So there are two ways you either do it. You say let Photoshop use, if you know the amount you want to calculate, like you could say, okay, out of the 6 GB of RAM, I want Photoshop to use just 3 GB. You see, so you can put 3,000 something megabyte here. If you wanted it to use one, it depends on you. But since I'm having 6 GB of RAM available and I don't have much more other application that runs on high RAM usage on this computer, I'll prefer it use 5 GB of RAM. That is to say 80% of my available RAM, which is the same thing you want to do. Ensure that you always give Photoshop 70% to 80% of your available RAM for it to better function. Now if you come down here, scratch disk, you remember where I was talking about file handling, where I talked of Photoshop saving temporary files automatically every after 10 to 5 minutes. That file that is automatically saved, where is it sent? It is sent to this scratch disk. So to enable also that your computer has sufficient scratch disk for memory recall, because that saving is known as memory recall, to ensure that it has sufficient RAM, sufficient space, pardon, I would ensure you aligning it to a section of more space, depending on the computer, the space your computer has. So like mine, it has been partitioned to 2, and these are the free spaces of the 2 partitions. So I'll prefer it to be saved on the higher partition. My computer runs on a 700 GB hard drive, which I partitioned into 2. So I can pick this one. That is where I have free space. Also, at this section, this is for those whose computer has external graphic card added onto them. What is a graphic card? A graphic card is simply graphics, pardon. Photoshop works more on graphics and RAM, because I might be talking about RAM usage and graphics, and so people may not really understand the connection inside the two. Photoshop is this application that runs more on RAM and graphics, because it needs high memory to be able to open these pictures and all the effects and everything that we are going to be using. It needs high level of memory. RAM is your memory, your computer memory. So you just imagine like Photoshop needs high level of your brain to be able to open everything that you need for it to open. While graphics also, it's the resolution, the image resolution. We'll be talking more about image resolution in Photoshop. You get to understand the difference between a low resolution image and a high resolution image. So your graphic card interacts much more with Photoshop because it is a picture and visual editing software. So the higher your graphic card, the higher the resolution of your image. Now my computer has an external graphic card. So what I want to do is mark this use graphic processor. So to ensure that Photoshop is using my external graphic card. But if your computer does not have this setting, don't worry, it will not be ticked. It's okay, it's fine, you can still use it like that. But this will be good for some higher resolution images and some more professionalized work. Now I think that is all there. The next thing I want to check is transparency. Now we'll be working with a type of file called the PNG file. Don't worry about that, I'll explain it in the future course. PNG file simply means a transparent file. So here you can choose how you want your transparency to look like. I love red. Red is my favorite color, so I pick my transparency to look like so. And you can also change the color of the gamma warming, something like this, but I don't always touch that. I just touch just the grid color red. It has light gray and many others, so you can pick from there grid colors that are here to customize your transparency. All right, I'll leave mine to red. And also the grid size, you can customize it here. You can still choose to have it with no grid, plain white, or small, medium, or large. I always love to use a medium and not none, because none makes it to look like a paper with a white background, so you can't really get the difference between a transparent image and an image with a white background. Alright, I think that's all there. Now in the section of units and rulers, we are going to be doing a lot of measurements, so ensure your ruler is in centimeters and your type is in points. Centimeters and points. Even though inside the application we can still further change them to other unit of measurements that we want to use in future lessons. Now guides and grids are simply lines that we'll be using to measure out some sections of our work. So I always don't touch these ones, you just leave them like that. Yeah, plugins are external plugins of Photoshop. You just want to tick this, and no, sorry. Now this one you can tick it when you want to load an external plugin in Photoshop. So we'll come back to this in the future lessons, where I'll be teaching you how to open or add external plugins in Photoshop. And I think that is final in the setting part of Photoshop. If everything is done, you click OK, then you close your Photoshop and reboot it and reopen it. So you have to close your Photoshop, then reopen it, so all these settings take effect. Alright, that will be the end of this lesson. On the second lesson now, I'll walk you through the tools and the tool panel and effects of Photoshop. Thanks for watching and see you in there.